It's
Okay,
amazing.
George, I think you're right in what you're saying. Paul Offit says this.
Mhm.
There is no memory because the grandmothers and the mothers have not seen children
Yes.
die from vaccine preventable disease.
Mhm.
That does not mean that this is not a serious disease that kills children.
I'm very serious.
And we cannot compare the measles vaccine with the influenza vaccine because the
Mhm.
influenza vaccine is not effective. In a bad year, it only prevents 25% of people from entering the hospital with influenza. In a good year, 50%.
Mhm.
Measles prevents 95 to 98% of all cases of measles in your child. So they are not the same vaccine. And I would prefer that people get their influenza vaccine, but the risk of dying from measles or being in the hospital for children, for your child that you're not vaccinating, let alone what we call herd immunity, is not the same as as what we see with influenza. So they're two very different things that we're dealing with.
Mhm.
Would we be so lucky that our parents were making these decisions based on information and statistics and relative risk assessment? But that isn't how parents and the general public are thinking about vaccines and public health and expertise nowadays. I think that created part of the complex suit that we're dealing with, which has led to what we're seeing right now.
You're absolutely right. What was one of the biggest? So what's going on right now in Texas with this? I want to call it an epidemic, but please no, it's not an epidemic. It's an outbreak of hundreds of cases.
And just from a factual point of view, what's happening right now is we are now up to approximately 198 cases of measles that have been primarily seen in rural West Texas, not far from Odessa, Middle Odessa, and Lubbock. These are sparsely populated counties in West Texas. The current outbreak centers around a Mennonite community out there. And they, like many other communities that are similar to them, are fairly insular and they do their own schooling and they infrequently encounter other people outside of their communities. But they also have a culture in which decision on what to do is fairly hierarchical, comes from the father of the family, and everybody falls in line with that. It's part of what they do. And that's not a value judgment, it's just a statement of how they are. And they tend to be, like many people in Texas, highly individualistic in their point of view, and they distrust authority figures and expertise, and they don't want to be told what to do. That's common throughout our culture here in Texas, but most especially out in West Texas. And so birds of a feather flock together. And if you have a susceptible population that's ready made, like apparently what we have had in the Mennonite community out in West Texas, and you have measles come into that community, it's a perfect breeding ground for an outbreak, which is what we're seeing right now. But just as I mentioned before, they have to do shopping and they drive long distances to go to store and to buy things and to go do things. And even the landscape out in West Texas makes you think you're all by yourself. You're never an island, and the decisions that are made by us as individuals will never just stay with us. It's potential risk for everybody else, which is the nature of public health and why we preach getting vaccinated. That's not a message, unfortunately, that resonates very well nowadays. It's become even more challenging since the COVID-19 pandemic. And frankly, we're losing the narrative and the arguments for public health.
Yes. So my understanding, there's almost or maybe over 200 cases in Texas and some in New Mexico and in Texas. Of the children that are getting measles, close to 30% are being hospitalized.
Yes. So there were, as I mentioned, the 198 as the last report, people who are sick with measles out in West Texas. The vast majority of those are children. And there have been many children hospitalized in children's hospitals in Lubbock, which is where the one individual died. So a school-aged child who was unvaccinated. I've actually spoken with some of my colleagues out there who have been taking care of these children.